Hi everyone, my name is Kate and today we are going to knit a super stylish, beautiful and fashionable vest like Kendall Jenner's. These vests are now at the peak of their popularity and we can't help but knit one. This vest is now on me, very comfortable and fits everything, and I also have a new hairstyle. I decided somehow to diversify my image. What do you think? Suits me or not? Write in the comments. This vest is very easy to knit, just as easy as possible. The main thing to know how to knit the right and purl stitches, how to make decreases. I will certainly tell you all of this, show and explain. You 100% will succeed. I knit my vest with cotton yarn and this is my result. You can take any yarn that you like. If you want to knit it rapidly, you can take thicker yarn than mine. I recommend you to take cotton yarn with acrylic for this summer. Subscribe me in the Instagram, be sure to tag me in stories. I see everything, I respond to everything, and of course, I will be glad to see you there. And before we start knitting, I want to remind you to subscribe to my channel, like this video, leave any comment because your comments and likes help to promote my videos and help others also try themselves in such creative work. And let's get started. We'll need 3 skeins of yarn. I have Gazzal baby cotton in 50 gram 165 meters. It's cotton with acrylic. Yarn is quite thin, so I will knit in 2 strands. You can take in 50 gram 115 meters or 110 meters. I have 6 mm needle. If you want a looser knitting, you can take a larger needles. Also don't carry around it or ordinary needles. So scissors, markers and stitching needle, tape measure, and 2 transparent buttons which can be found at any store with fabrics or hooks for clothes. Also we'll need an ordinary needle with thread to sew these hooks or buttons. You can sew with transparent thread. I remind you that I will knit in 2 threads, so one end I find on the side and the second end is right in the middle of the yarn. We get here this bump, unravel it and find the other end of the yarn. This bump you can have much bigger than mine. We connect the 2 ends together and we will knit this way. If you have a thicker yarn than mine, you can knit in 1 thread. Now we'll need to knit a small sample to knit a vest to your size, and at the same time we will learn how to knit front and purl stitches. We take away from the end of the thread about 70 centimeters and take the thread in your hands like this. The yarn is on top of your thumb and on the top of your index finger. Take 2 needles and put them on the tension between your thumb and index finger. Pull it down, put the needles in the loop under your thumb, then bring it under your index finger and again in the loop under your thumb. And tighten it like this. Now we have 2 loops. Then we will have 1 more loop at a time. Again, put it in the loop under your thumb, then under your index finger, and again in the loop under your thumb. Then tighten. Thus you will have about 70-20 loops until you have a very small tip from the end of the yarn. I got 17 loops. Take out 1 needle and we leave the tip on the right side. We put the main thread on the top of your index finger for convenience. Look carefully, don't knit the tip. The very first loop we always, absolutely always, just take off on the right needle. we can pull the tip, but not hard, just a little. Then insert the needle to the front loop of the stitch like this. Grab the yarn that leads to the ball and see how I put it on the needle with my middle finger. And take it out of the loop and take it off to the right needle. Put the needle to the front loop like this. Grab the yarn that leads to the ball and help yourself with the middle finger. It's how to put the thread on the needle. Take it out of the loop and take it out to the right needle. Then do the same thing to the end of the row. I get to the end of the row, and the last stitch is always a purl stitch. We throw the main yarn to the front and put the needle behind the front loop like this. Grab the yarn and take it out from the left needle to the right. Now we have knitted a row with the front stitches, and now we turn our work and knit a row with the purl stitches, and so on to the end of the whole vest. We'll alternate the front rows and purl rows. The first stitch we take off behind the front loop. We always take it off on the right needle. And now the main yarn is thrown forward on the left needle. We put it behind the front loop of the stitch, grab the yarn and take it off. Then we do the same thing. Put the needle behind the front loop of a stitch, grab the yarn and take it off on the right needle. Knitting like this until the end of the row. The last stitch is always purl stitch on front row or purl row, always. And this is how our wrong side looks like. It has horizontal bars, and on the right side we have such V's. The first loop we always take off on the right needle. Then we put the needle like this behind the back loop. Here, grab the yarn and take it off on the right needle. Knitting the front stitch like this until the end of the row, and the last stitch is always a purl stitch. I've reached the end of the row and knitting the purl stitch. Then we turn our work and start knitting the purl row. And this is enough for our sample to calculate the size of the vest And now we need to determine how wide you want the front part. I want about 20 centimeters. The height from shoulder to bottom, I want somewhere between 40-41 centimeters, but if I get a little less, it's nothing too bad, I'm also satisfied. The height from bottom to the beginning of the creases is somewhere between 22-23 centimeters, and the same height we will have in the middle of the chest. The shoulder width is 8 centimeters. The back part is of course 40 centimeters, and the height of the beginning of the creases we also have 22-23 centimeters. And now we need to calculate how much we have in 1 centimeters loops. We take our work and a tape measure and look. Here are our stitches, and you can count it by the loops on the needles. Attach the tape measure and look how many loops we have in 1 centimeter. I have about 2 loops. Write down that in 1 centimeter, 2 loops. You may have another value. Next, we need to measure how much loops we have in 5 centimeters. I have 8 loops, and now these values we need to multiply by the width of the one front part. I have it 20 centimeters. In the first example it turns out 40, and in the second we need to divide by 5 and it turns out 32. Now we need to calculate all the same in a slightly stretched form. How many loops we have in 1 centimeter if we slightly stretch our knitting? The main thing is not to stretch with all the force, just slightly. I say that I have in 1 centimeter about 1.2 stitches. You can write it that way, measure directly by eye. The same in 5 centimeters, slightly stretch and see how many loops we have in 5 centimeters. I have about 6.5 loops, also multiplied by 20, and the second example, we divided by 5. Next we need add all the numbers together. I have 40 plus 32 plus 24 and plus 26. The sum is 122, and we need to divide it by 4. And at the end I get 30.5. And what is 30.5? Is the number of loops that we need to cast on for one front part. You may have it a different value. I rounded it up to the 32 loops to be an even value. So it turned out 32 loops per 20 centimeters, so for 40 centimeters we need to dial 64 loops. I hope you are not confused here, sudden math lesson, but it's really important because everyone have different sizes. Now we can dissolve our little sample. I hope you remember how to knit right and purl stitches, and now we'll cast on the number of loops we'll need for one front part. In my case it's 32 loops, in your case it may be a different value. To gain somewhere around 32 loops, we need to leave the end of the yarn about meter. Place the yarn in hand like this. Then take 2 needles, put them on the tension between the fingers, pull down and through the loop under your thumb, then grab the yarn under your index finger and pull under your thumb again. Tighten the loop. We have 2 loops on the needles. Next, we will dial in 1 loop. Also bring the needles under the thumb, then under the index finger and bring it into the loop under the thumb. So we get 32 stitches, in your case maybe a different number. I casted on 32 stitches, took out a needle, and now we will begin to knit the first row. I have left a long enough tip, so I put it aside to not accidentally knit it instead of the main yarn. So the first loop we always take off on the right needle. And knit the front stitches like this until the end of the row. Remember to help yourself throw the thread on the needle with the middle finger of your left hand, so it's much more convenient. The first row is always the most uncomfortable, but it will get easier, so continue with the first row and remember again that the last stitch is always a purl one. Put the yarn to the front of your left needle and make a purl stitch. Turn your work, and now we will have a row with the purl stitches. The first stitch we always take off on the right needle, then we put the main yarn in front of the left needle and start making the purl stitches so that we can go all the way through the row. You need to remember only two things. The first loop we always take off simply on the right needle, and the second is that the last loop is always a purl, no matter what is the right or wrong row. We do so to form an edge loops, for which we sew together all parts of the vest at the end. We turned our work and started to knit the front row. The first stitch we take off on the right needle, and now we start to knit on the back loop of the stitch, and now it will make the knitting go faster, especially if you are knitting with a thicker yarn. So you see, it's not very difficult. We knit like this, alternating the front and purl rows until we get to the first decreases. Probably it's 40 rows up, but it's in my case. It's 21-22 centimeters height. You may knit more. And now I'll show you what to do if you suddenly missed a loop and it dissolved. Spoiler, it can be corrected. So let's pretend you are doing the front row and all of a sudden a stitch slips off your knitting needle and loses and forms a loop like this. The main thing is to grab at least one loop and put this yarn in it. You can do it with a knitting needle or like I did. Make a new loop and put it back on the left needle, but put it so that your walls of the loop are exactly the same as the others, because if we put it on differently, you see we have this front wall asking to be knit, and we need to be able to knit by the back loop, like this. If suddenly the loop loses in a few rows, like this, don't worry, just make the same thing. Grab the loop and make 2 new loops. But be careful and don't lose another loops by making a new loop. And how to count the rows. On the front side we have clearly visible these V's, and directly under the holes we can count the rows. Those loops that we have on the needles, they don't count as a row, only what is down below. So I keep alternating the front and purl rows until we get to our decreases. For me it's 22-23 centimeters height. In fact, we need just rectangular. This is my 40 rows. You may have another number. Be guided by yourself. And now we will begin to make decreases. On the arm side we are going to make 13 decreases, and on the chest side we are going to make 6 decreases. So we have left 13 stitches on the shoulder. 13 plus 13 is 26, plus 6 is 32. It's the total number of the loops which I cast on at the beginning. The other side is exactly the same, only in a mirror image. Look, now we are knitting the left front of the vest, and we will do 6 rows of the decreases on both sides. Then on one side we finish making decreases, but continue to make them on the other side until we have on the needle 13 loops. The 31 rows I take off the first loop, and now with the second and third we are going to make decrease. And we just knit 2 loops together like one through the back loop, like this. Take a marker and mark the first stitch so we know where to sew the button or where to end with the back and front together. Continue knitting usual front stitches until we have 3 loops left at the end. And now remove these 2 loops on the right needle like this from the back loop, and then rearrange it again to the left needle like this. And now from the front loop knit them together. By the fact that we are rearrange them, we'll not see this decrease. And also mark the last stitch. The wrong row or the purl row we knit without the decreases. We just knit as usual. We make decreases only on front rows. It's our front row. The first loop is taken off, then 2 knit together behind the back loop like this. Then until the end of the row, knitting without change until we have 3 loops left on the left needle. Take these loops to the right needle behind the back loop like this, the first and the second, and put them back on the left needle so that we have the front loop closer to us. Put the needle behind the front loop, grab the yarn and knit 2 loops together. And the last one is a purl stitch. The wrong side row knit without change. The third front row with decreases, the second and third knit together through the back loop like this, then knit without change until we have 3 loops left on the left needle. Take 2 loops on the right needle, then put them on the left and knit with front loops together. The last stitch is always purl stitch and the wrong row is the same. In this way, with the decreases, we have a total of 6 front rows. Then we stop making decreases on one side and the other will continue. I'm with you knitted 3 rows with decreases, so continue to knit. This is what I got. I finished 6 rows with decreases and we could use the markers to count how many rows we've done. We had to do 12 rows because we took the front rows with the decreases and the wrong row without them, so we should have 12 rows here. And now on the right side we continue to make decreases, and you can put a marker to not forget about this. And on the left side we finished make decreases. Now knit 2 loops together and then until the end of the row we knit without any change. On this side we don't make a decrease. Turn our work and the wrong row we knit without change. So continue to make decreases only on the right side until we have left 13 loops on the needle. Or another number, it depends on how wide you want your shoulder. I have done all my decreases and I have 13 loops on my needle. Now we just have to knit the usual rows up to the length you want your vest. I have 41 centimeters, but I decided to make a little smaller to be about 39 centimeters. I got 39 centimeters, the width is 20 centimeters, and don't forget to straighten the edges, and the width of the shoulder I got about 7.5 centimeters. And now we will close the loops. The first stitch we take off, then the second, make just front stitch, and then we have to put the first loop through the second one. Then we make front stitch again and then we put the first one into the second one. And then we repeat the same till the end of the row. The last stitch is purl stitch, the first one through the second one, and do one more stitch like this and tighten. Leave a long enough tip to sew with it the front part of the vest and the back part. You can remove the marker, which showed us where we need to continue to make decreases, but the two remain. And now we need to knit exactly the same second part with 6 rows of decreases on both sides. Then I will come back to you and show how we will continue to knit. My second piece is ready. I marked where I start to make decreases. I take an extra marker and now I mark the left side because on the left side I will continue to make the decreases and on the right side not. Start knitting a row as usual. We have left 3 stitches, and first you take off 2 stitches behind the back loop and then change them again on the left needle and knit them together. The last loop is purl. This way we continue to knit with left side decreases until we have 13 loops on the needles. In my case, in your case it may be another number. And after the decreases row, we also knit straight row up to the desired length. This is what my 2 finished front pieces look like, exactly the same. The number of rows are also the same. The back piece knit exactly the same as the front, but of course without the decreases in the middle. We make the decreases evenly on both sides, 13 rows on the right side. After we knit the usual rows up so that we had a number of rows equal that which we had on the front piece. So if I have 32 stitches on the front piece, I will cast on 64 stitches to the back piece. Leave the tip twice as much than left on the front. In my case, on the front I left about a meter, here I leave 2 meters, maybe a little less. Start casting on 64 stitches. Knit everything exactly as in the front parts. First, we just knit a rectangular up about 40 rows. On the 40 ones, start making decreases on both sides. 13 rows up with decreases. Then we knit somewhere between 6 or 10 rows, as usual, without decreases. When you run out of yarn, we take a new one and knit the next loop with the new yarn. Try to leave a longer tip so you can tie 2 of these ends together in a knot. And now the 2 ends can be tied in 2 knots. I knitted 40 rows up and now I will begin to make decreases. Put markers on both sides of the first row of the decreases, so we continue to knit 13 front rows up. You should have a certain number of loops left on the needles. Count how many you have. 13 decreases on the right side plus 13 decreases on the left side, it's 26. 64 is my total number of loops minus 26 equal 38. So I should have 38 loops on my needles when I end the decreases. I knitted all 13 rows up with decreases on the left and right side, and now we just need to knit usual row without decreases to the length we want. And now we'll close the edge. The length 39 centimeters, the width 40 centimeters, top turned out 23 centimeters. We put the back part on the front side to us and take the front part and look where we have the armpit side and where it's the side of the chest. Where we go more straight diagonal is the armpit side. Then take it inside out and it's our left side. Take the needle and insert the tip that we have left from the front part. And now count the number of braids that we have left from the cloth in the row, and the same amount ident from the back side. Insert the needle for the both strands of the braid, and then insert it in the next braid. And then next braid from the front side, sew together. Then insert the next braid from the front side and into the next braid in the back side. And sew like this until the end of the row. The front side looks like this, and on the other side do the same thing. You can hide the ends in the seam that we have formed on the wrong side. On the sides, just like on the shoulders, from the bottom and to the markers. If well straighten our work, on the side we will find such a big braids on the one side, and here there are on the other side. So we need to insert the needle into these big braids. And we sew the same way as we did it on the shoulders, just don't tighten it too much. Hide the ends and make the same thing on the other side. And the front side looks like this. And now we need to sew only hooks or buttons. To do this, try it on yourself and mark where you want to be compound, and mark it with a marker. We could sew the button where we now have a marker, but probably this place can't fit because it will be too high for you, so be sure to try it on yourself. I have marked those places where we'll sew the buttons, and now use regular needle and thread I will sew it. And such a super trendy, super stylish vest we have with you. As you can see, knitting is not very difficult, all as simple as possible. I hope that I've explained to you everything clearly. Knitting a vest, you can use absolutely any yarn that you like. If you like a simple image, choose a yarn such as mine, maybe even thinner. If you like a more interesting, extravagant look, choose a thicker yarn. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm sure you got it all. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask me in the comments. I see everything, I read everything, and I answer everything. And I thank you for watching this video. And bye, kiddies!